Welcome to the Institute for Business Growth and the Sales Accelerator Workshop. In this module, we're going to discuss how to run a very effective sales call that increases your probability of getting the right information on the table and introducing the accountabilities to make sure the action items are defined and followed up on. How many times have you received an invitation like this one that just says meeting, office, and date? No agenda, no time, no attendees, nothing. You don't know if you should attend. You don't know if you just delete it. Well, just as a rule of thumb, when I get these, I delete them. Well, I don't delete them. I actually decline them with a little note saying I need more details. What I'm going to share with you is how I set up my meetings so that they're very effective meetings and everybody knows what we're doing as a result of the meeting and also the outcomes that we want. So let's talk about it. We're going to talk about right now how to prepare. I am an absolute big believer in purpose. We have to define the purpose and the outcome of the meeting. What I mean by that is, why are we meeting and what is the expected outcome of that meeting? That begs the question, do we really need a meeting? And if the purpose is clear and the outcome is clearly articulated and defined, typically the answer is yes. We also have to have a very clear agenda. People want to know why they're being invited to the meeting and the role that they're expected to play. In addition, if there's any pre-reading that needs to be done or any material that needs to be reviewed before the meeting, it's essential that we let people know that. And also what we want to do is set up a reminder. I use Outlook, and in Outlook I can set up a reminder 1 day, 1 week, 15 minutes ahead of time. I have a tendency to like to set the reminder to several days ahead of time to give people some time to prepare, because I know how busy we all are. Now, the purpose, as I mentioned, is hugely important. Albert Einstein stated, if I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on the solution, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask, for once I know the proper question, I could solve the problem in less than 5 minutes. It's essential that we understand what problem we're solving or the purpose of the meeting. So here's what an invitation looks like for me. If we were to ever participate in a meeting and I set you up in Outlook or I sent you an email, there would be the purpose of the meeting. The purpose of the meeting is to review the proposal, for example, or the purpose of the meeting is to define the challenges that we're dealing with moving forward. Whatever the purpose of your sales call is, that's the purpose of your meeting. I list the attendees and I have effectively two lists. One, the people who are absolutely required to be there, and then people who I think would be useful to be there, but attendance isn't mandatory. I lay out the agenda, and the agenda could be the date and the time and the location and the purpose of the meeting. And then, for example, I might spend 10 minutes going over something, going over the purpose of the meeting, making sure nothing has changed. Talk about what we want to get as an outcome. And then lastly, if there's anything they have to do for preparation, and it could be as simple as sending them a copy of a proposal. So the purpose of the meeting might be to review the proposal to determine what good next steps are. The attendees are the decision makers and the influencers. The agenda could be a review of the business issues. It could be a review of how we're going to fix those challenges. The desired outcome is to determine if there is a next step, and if there is, what is it? And then lastly, please read the proposal before the meeting. So at the beginning of the meeting, I double check each person's time. And what I mean by that is, if I schedule an hour for the meeting, I'm going to go around the room and ask each person, are we still okay for the hour? I want to know if something has changed. So if a decision maker says I've got to leave in 30 minutes, then we have to make some adjustments. It could be we cancel the meeting. It could be that we juggle the agenda around. It could be that we hit the highlights first where he or she is important so that when he leaves, the meeting can continue. I also check to see if the outcome has changed. So when I schedule a meeting and the outcome is, for example, to determine if next steps, one of the questions that I ask is, here's why we're meeting, here's the outcome that we have agreed to. Has anything changed since the last communication? I want to know if somebody has changed jobs, if there's new decision makers, if new requirements have popped up. If anything has changed at all, this is where we flush that out. And then I define the ground rules. So the ground rules could be, I have 10 minutes to do my part of the presentation. You have 15 minutes for yours. Anything that comes up that's not part of the meeting, we're going to put on a parking lot. We may ask somebody to describe the meeting, which means that they will take notes for everybody. Generally, the meeting rules is what we talk about. And then, as I mentioned, a parking lot. So if something comes up that's not part of the meeting, but it is important, we'll put it on a parking lot. We want to make sure that we don't forget about it. During the meeting, what I want to do is make sure everybody follows the agenda. And as I'm going through the agenda, I'm always checking in with people, and I'm looking for acknowledgments. Do you understand what we've covered? Do you agree with the decisions that we're making? Do you have any questions or concerns about how something might work? Will you agree to do this in a certain point in time? Very, very important that we have that follow-up and acknowledgement. One of the things that's really important in a meeting is lots of times assumed decisions are made. And what I mean by that is that people are talking and there's some action that's defined, but it's never really articulated. When we hit that point in the meeting, I like to stop and say, sounds like we've made a decision. Articulate what that decision is and make sure that everybody buys in. Also during the meeting, when we make a decision, I want to define and document what the next steps are. For example, what is it that we're going to do? Who's responsible for doing it? What are the time frames that will be done? And who's responsible? Now, please note that the person responsible may not be the person doing it. So if the owner of the company agrees that they have to provide some information, and let's say, for example, the accounts payable clerk is providing that, I have two acknowledgments that I have to firm up. One is the owner's commitment to make it happen, and then the acknowledgement of the accounts payable clerk, if they're in the meeting, understanding what it is that we're looking for. Take notes. Here's some formats that I use for taking notes that are very useful. The date of the meeting and who was in attendance, the agenda that we've covered and rolled out, any decisions that were made, any action items, timeframes, responsibilities, and next steps that have been determined that we want to do as a result of the meeting, and then any general notes and comments. Now, at the end of the meeting, one of the things I want to do is I always try to leave 15 minutes or so to review this, is I want to schedule any follow-up meetings. And it could be, for example, that Sue needs to talk to Sally. When are you going to do that? Is it going to happen in the next couple days, next couple weeks? I summarize and review decisions and next steps or action items that came out of the meeting. And I ask for questions or feedback or what I call smart remarks about the meeting. What worked? Did we satisfy the requirements? Did we meet the agenda? Is there anything that we missed that we should have included? And it's especially important to ask the question, have we missed anything? Because many times through a discussion in a meeting, things come up that we didn't plan for, that we may not even known about. And then if time permits, we'll summarize the parking lot items and then act on them if we can. And if we can't, then maybe schedule a different set of action items to address the parking lot. So after the meeting's over, after we've done all this, what I want to do is distribute the notes to the team and highlight the decisions, next steps, action items, and responsibilities. And I actually put that in the email or in the summary document because I don't want people having to open up a document to read that. Though I will include it in the document. And then the key is execution. You got to follow up and you got to follow through, especially on items that are yours. Now, here's what I would like you to think about. If you're planning your sales meetings, this can be a one-person sales meeting. This can be a 50-person sales meeting, though 50 people is handled a little bit different. But I want you to prepare for the meeting. In a different video, we talked about how to prepare, how to create the agenda, what questions to ask. So I'm not going to cover that here, but I really want you to review that if you need to and figure out what the agenda is going to be, what questions you need to ask, what's the outcome you want, what are the questions that will drive that outcome, what are the objections that people may have, and how do you want to respond to those objections. Document who you think needs to be in the meeting, are required to be in the meeting, and if they're not there, there is no meeting, no need to meet. Create your agenda, and at the meeting, make sure that you confirm your purpose, agenda, and outcome, document your decisions, and follow up on the next step. Now, it sounds like a lot, but when you do this once, you've created a template or a format that you can use for almost all meetings. So it's very essential that you follow this. If we go back to behavior styles, if you look very closely, what you'll see is we're addressing the needs of all 4 styles. The drivers have a strong need to be in control, hence the agenda, know what's going on. Our analytics, our conscientious, have a strong need to be right, so we're laying out the process we're going to use so that they're comfortable with it. Our studies are very much want to know who's involved and how it's going to impact other people so they can see who's involved and why they're involved. And our influencers are going to understand the details behind it. We know details aren't important to them, but it will allow them to contribute and plan how they're going to contribute. So this process works. I look forward to seeing you on the inside. Until next time.